simple game created by Dong Nguyen, a Vietnamese designer and developer, managed to drive the whole world crazy in just a few weeks. According to the author, it took him only a couple of days to create Flappy Bird. By the way, it was originally called Flap Flap, but there was already a game with that name in the App Store, so he had to come up with a new name, Flappy Bird. Thus, on May the 24th, 2013, the game debuted in the App Store. Until October, almost nobody knew about it, and then something happened. The game went viral, and everyone on social media was talking about it. Users made memes and shared their frustration, because it was almost impossible to finish Flappy Bird. One of the players even said that it took him half an hour to score only 5 points. The overall impression was something like, "I hate this game, but I just can't stop playing." It seemed that it was impossible to get to the end of Flappy Bird, because no one has enough nerve cells for it. Nevertheless, people tried hard, and it seems that someone managed to do it. Well, the game ends exactly as it started, irritating everyone who plays it. After scoring 999 points, the bird meets Mario, and the game ends. Imagine the disappointment of the player. Pac-Man. When it comes to classic video games, Pac-Man is one of the most important ones. It's a visually simple arcade game created by the Japanese company Namco and released in 1980. The player controls Pac-Man and has to eat all the dots in the maze, avoiding the ghosts that chase the protagonist. Each of the ghosts has its own pattern of behavior, moving slower than Pac-Man for a while, but after level 21, they accelerate and the game becomes much more difficult. But is it possible to win? Well, the really stubborn players have found out that there is not an answer to that. According to the developers, Pac-Man doesn't have an end, because the increasing complexity of the game wouldn't let you make it far. But they clearly underestimated the popularity of the game. So, some players were able to pass the 255 levels of the game, which took them several hours, and they found out that the level 256 had a software error, which even the developers didn't know about. One of such devoted fans of Pac-Man was Billy Mitchell. On July 3rd, 1999, Mitchell scored his first perfect result of 3,333,360 points in the original Pac-Man, and thus went down in history. But what happens after level 255? On the 256th level, the left half of the maze is displayed correctly, and the right half is a random set of colored numbers, letters, and other symbols. In other words, a mess. However, there is a way to pass this level. After that, the game resumes on level 1, but the enemies move at a higher speed, and if you complete this level as well, then nothing happens. You'll just be thrown out to the main screen and offered to start over. This seems to be the most disappointing ending you could think of. Battletoads. Battletoads is often called one of the most difficult video games of the 8-bit era. People got stressed playing it, and some probably even broke their joysticks because of it. This game was once created to compete with the game Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but very quickly became a completely independent work of art. In the 90s, completing Battletoads was considered something incredible and heroic. Even serious game reviewers criticized Battletoads for its difficulty, and some players described it as outrageous. The disbalance of the difficulty also caused a negative reaction. It was much easier to destroy many bosses than getting to them. Nevertheless, the game became an absolute hit. So, what was awaiting the most stubborn and lucky gamers at the end of these epic Toad adventures? The final boss was waiting the heroes at the top of the Dark Tower. It was Dark Queen. After defeating her, she, like a good villain, declares that this is not the end, then spins and flies into space. After rescuing Pimple and Princess Angelica, the four return to the SS Vulture, and the game ends. Contra. Like many other arcade games, the goal of Contra was defeating the villains. This time, the bad guys were an organization known as Red Falcon. They wanted to destroy all humanity. The villains were controlled by aliens. Bill Mad Dog Riser and Lance Scorpion Bean are the fighters who have to deal with all this. They land on the island to destroy the base and save the world. After getting further and deeper, the heroes realize that exterminating the terrorists is not enough. They also have to destroy the alien heart in the den of the aliens. That's that's the final boss, and this is no easy task. The final scene of the game is a helicopter leaving the island, which explodes beautifully, for an 8-bit game of course. After that, you can see the congratulatory message which reports that the villains are destroyed, the Earth is saved, and you are the hero. Donkey Kong. Another arcade game released by Nintendo in 1981. It's one of the earliest platform games in history. You have to move your character across a range of platforms and jump over obstacles. In the game, Mario, originally named Mr. Video and then Jumpman, has to save the damsel in distress. She was called Pauline, although initially she was simply Lady. Well, the villain here is a giant gorilla named Donkey Kong. The hero and the gorilla later became some of Nintendo's most popular and recognizable characters. Donkey Kong is considered one of the most important projects in the golden age of arcade video games, as well as one of the most popular arcade games of all time. And it seems like the developers suspected how cool it was going to be, because they created 3 different endings for Donkey Kong. In the first ending, Mario drops the gorilla and reunites with his lady. In the second ending, Mario drops the gorilla on himself and dies, and the lady is left alone upstairs. And the third ending is probably the strangest. Mario drops the lady and reunites with the gorilla? No, seriously, you can even see a little heart between them, and it seems that they are both a little confused, just like us. Tetris. We've talked about some games and their creators who didn't even bother to come up with a decent ending, so you probably don't expect anything special from Tetris, because it's a simple game. You just have to put some blocks on top of each other. However, there are 2 endings. In one of them, you're greeted by some classic video game characters and a pixel cathedral. The domes of the cathedral fly away somewhere outside the screen, as if everything before wasn't strange enough. In the second ending, the temple flies away completely, and all this accompanied by cheerful music. After that, you're offered to write your name on the high score list. Earthworm Jim. A superhero worm mutated after finding a special robotic suit. Sounds like nonsense, but this story has become iconic. Of course, what else does a super worm do if you can't save the princess? In addition, he has to fight enemies who want to get a hold of his suit. The game ends with Jim defeating all the enemies and saving the princess. However, she doesn't really have time to reciprocate Jim's feelings. The princess is squashed by a flying cow, which was launched at the beginning of the game by Jim himself. The character goes away in disappointment, and the princess, along with the cow, falls into the lava. However, a few seconds later, Jim returns and takes the gold crown of the princess. Let nothing be wasted, right? Duck Hunt. If you grew up in the 90s, you're probably familiar with this game. It was incredibly popular. More than 28 million copies of the game were sold, making Duck Hunt the second best-selling NES game. You had to hit the ducks flying out of the grass, 1 or 2, depending on the game mode you chose. In the story, the ducks were forced to fly by a hunting dog. You had 3 bullets to shoot the targets. When you hit the dog victoriously sticks its head out of the grass, showing the prey. And when you miss, it laughs. By the way, Game Daily and official Nintendo magazine have included the dog in their greatest video game moments list. But what about the end of the game? There must be something exciting for sure. Sadly, like many early video games, Duck Hunt doesn't have any epic ending. When you reach level 99 and complete the game, you go back to level 0 and see a duck rain. It's literally raining cats and dogs, ducks, that are impossible to shoot. And this laughing dog. You know, not exactly what you expect to get as a reward. T-Rex game. Unlike previous games, this is something that every Chrome user has seen. You're trying to open a website when suddenly the internet connection fails for some unknown reason. Now you don't have access to the network. So instead, Chrome shows you a simple one-player game. A pixel dinosaur who has to run and dodge obstacles, gaining points. It's definitely much more fun to wait for the internet while playing. For the first time, T-Rex appeared in 2014, and of course, there were some issues. For example, on old Android devices, everything was awfully glitchy, so the creators had to completely rewrite the game. But now, we can't imagine Chrome without this dinosaur. In 2018, the game was played 270 million times a month. It got to the point that the creators had to give corporate managers the opportunity to disable the game. The problem was that school children and even adults who were supposed to be working were just way too into it. But like any other game, the T-Rex game has an end, right? The dinosaur keeps running faster and faster. After the day comes the night. It can't last forever, can it? Well, according to Edward Jung, a Google Chrome UX engineer, it's going to take about 17 million years to complete the game. But we don't think that the space